Welcome back to Mr. Fearhouse. You found your way here again, to the quiet corner of the internet where the walls seem to listen. And tonight those walls are hiding something. The theme? Strangers living in the walls. Real homes. Real people. And the hidden lives crawling just a few feet beyond the drywall. These aren't ghost stories. They're the kind that make you start checking vents, ceilings, and that strange smell in the hallway. Stories of secret tenants, of breathing you can't explain, of the silent watchers who were never supposed to be found, but be warned. These aren't the kind of tales you just hear. Once you know they've happened, you'll start to wonder if your own home sounds a little too quiet tonight. Most people listen, get chills, and move on without subscribing. Don't be like them. Stay close. Stay curious. Tell me, what time is it where you are right now? Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments before the stories start, because tonight, we're not alone. Let's begin. The first time I heard the footsteps above me, I thought I was dreaming. It was around 2 a.m, that weird hollow hour where your brain starts making monsters out of plumbing noises. I remember lying there half asleep when I heard it, slow, careful steps across the ceiling. Not the kind that creak once and vanish. These moved, back and forth, like someone pacing. My apartment is on the top floor. There shouldn't be anyone above me. I lay there staring at the ceiling, holding my breath so I could hear better. It was quiet for a few seconds, then a faint sound. A soft scrape like fabric brushing against wood. I sat up. My room felt colder and I could hear my own pulse in my ears. Rats, I whispered to myself, even though deep down I didn't believe it. I tried to sleep again, but every creak and sigh of the building felt deliberate now. Around 3:15 I heard it again, heavier this time. 2 slow steps. Then a muffled thud. I froze. I almost called my landlord, but I knew what he'd say. Old buildings make sounds, Megan. It's just settling. I told myself the same thing until I finally fell asleep. The next morning, I noticed something weird. My cereal box was open. I live alone and I never eat breakfast that early. But the flap was bent back like someone had poured a bowl. I checked the door locks, it's still bolted. The windows were shut. I tried not to overthink it. Maybe I'd done it half asleep. By the third night, the noises were louder. I was sitting on my couch watching TV when I heard a dull dragging sound from above the living room ceiling. I muted the show, silence, then drag, drag, drag. Like something heavy being pulled across the floor. I stood there for a long time trying to map out where it was coming from. My apartment isn't big, a 1-bedroom unit in an old converted house from the 1940s. There's a small square hatch in the hallway ceiling that leads to the attic. No one's supposed to go up there. It's for insulation and wiring, but that's where the noise came from. I climbed onto a chair and looked up at the hatch. Dust hung in the beam of my flashlight. The tiny chain latch was intact. No signs of tampering. I wanted to pull it open just to know, but something in my gut screamed, "Don't." Instead, I texted my landlord, "Hey, can someone check the attic? I keep hearing movement up there." He replied 2 hours later, "There's no access besides your hatch. Probably raccoons. I'll send someone next week." Next week, great. That night I couldn't relax. I turned on every light and left the TV playing just for noise. Around midnight I went to the kitchen for water. That's when I noticed it. The fridge door was slightly open. Just an inch. Inside, a slice of cheese was missing from the wrapper. I froze. My first thought was a break-in. I grabbed a kitchen knife, checked every room, every closet, nothing, no open windows. No signs of forced entry. I tried to calm myself down. Maybe I hadn't shut it properly earlier. Maybe. But when I went back to my bedroom, I noticed something I couldn't explain. The attic hatch, the one in the hallway ceiling, was slightly ajar, just enough that you could see a thin line of darkness between the hatch and the frame. I don't even remember dropping the knife. I just backed away until my shoulders hit the wall. My throat went dry. I wanted to run outside, but it was 1 a.m. and I felt stupid. Maybe it shifted from humidity. Maybe. But then I saw something fall from the gap. Just a small thing. Barely a shadow. It hit the floor with a soft clink. A paper clip. Nothing terrifying about that, except I hadn't used one in months. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in my car until sunrise, engine running. watching the second-floor windows of my own apartment waiting for a curtain to move. When daylight finally came, I went back inside. Everything was silent again. The hatch was closed, perfectly sealed, like nothing had ever happened. I told myself I was paranoid. I told myself stress does weird things to people, but deep down I knew something had shifted in that ceiling. Something alive, and it knew I was starting to notice. I didn't go to work the next day. Every time I walked through the apartment, I could feel it, the weight above me, like the ceiling had a pulse. I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop open, pretending to work from home, but all I really did was stare up at the faint outline of the attic hatch. My landlord hadn't responded again. My friends said I was overreacting. "You've been stressed lately," they said. "You probably imagined it." I almost believed them, until I found the footprints. Not full prints, just a dust outline on top of my hallway shelf, right beneath the attic opening. It looked like someone had stepped there barefoot and jumped down. The shape was unmistakable. Toes arch heel. Human. I stood there for a full minute, unable to breathe. The shelf was taller than me. There was no way I could have made that mark. That's when I decided to set up my phone. I placed it on the hallway floor, camera pointed up toward the attic hatch. I hit record, then left for a few hours to grab groceries, mostly just to have an excuse to not be there. When I came back, everything looked the same. Quiet. Still. I checked the video. At first, it was just static silence in my 6 minutes, then 12, then 20. Then around the 40-minute mark, I saw it. The camera wobbled slightly. The frame shook, and then the hatch moved, barely, but enough to see the chain sway. A hand, and pale, thin, slipped through the crack, reached down, and carefully, quietly pulled the hatch back into place. That's all. Just a hand, no face, no sound. Just the suggestion of someone up there making sure I didn't know. I dropped my phone. I actually screamed. Then I realized the hand was left-handed, and I felt this sick twist in my stomach because the only person I knew who was left-handed was my ex, Tyler. The one who used to have a key to my place before I changed the locks, except the locks hadn't been changed. Not really. The landlord had just replaced the cylinder. If Tyler had copied his own spare key, I grabbed my phone, my bag, my coat, and ran out. I didn't even lock the door behind me. I spent the night at my friend Zoe's. She's one of those people who never believes in horror, only logic. When I showed her the video, she watched it twice and said, "That could be anything. Reflection, draft, whatever. You need to calm down." But she let me crash on her couch. I thought I'd feel safe there. Around 4 a.m., my phone buzzed. A motion alert from my living room camera, one I didn't remember setting. When I opened the app, my stomach dropped. The alert showed a grainy, low-light image of my living room, and in the corner near the hallway door, a figure was standing, barefoot, head tilted up toward the ceiling. They were looking directly at the attic hatch. I slammed the phone shut and threw it across the room. Zoe woke up groggy, asking what happened. I couldn't even speak. I just said, "Someone's in there, right now." She wanted to call the police, but I begged her not to. I didn't want to go through another round of maybe it's raccoons. I needed proof. The next morning, I drove back to the apartment with Zoe and her boyfriend. Daylight made everything look normal again, but the air inside felt stale, like someone had been breathing it all night. We checked every door and window. All locked from the inside. The hatch looked untouched again. Zoe's boyfriend grabbed a ladder from his truck. "Let's just get this over with," he said. When he pushed the hatch open, a small puff of insulation dust drifted down. The smell that came with it was awful, sour like sweat and spoiled milk. He climbed halfway up, flashlight in hand. "See anything?" I asked, barely breathing. He didn't answer at first. "Then there's stuff up here." "What kind of stuff?" He came back down holding a half-empty water bottle and a small blanket, filthy and damp. "Someone's definitely been up there," Zoe gasped. I felt my knees go weak. We searched the rest of the attic, but whoever had been living there was gone. There was a small space cleared in the insulation, just big enough for a sleeping bag, a few wrappers, and a flashlight. Whoever it was had been living above me for weeks, watching me, eating my food, moving around while I slept. We sealed the hatch with nails and duct tape that afternoon. But even as we left, I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever had been up there hadn't gone far, that maybe they were waiting for me to come back. I didn't go back that night. I told myself I'd move out. I'd leave everything. The furniture, the clothes, even the security deposit. I didn't care. But when I called the landlord the next morning, he brushed me off again. "You're being dramatic, Megan. We didn't find anyone. If there's evidence of trespassing, call the police." Not me. I hung up before I said something I'd regret. The thing is, I did call the police, twice. They sent an officer who looked around for 5 minutes, glanced at the hatch and said, "You probably scared them off." Then he left. That was it. By afternoon, I had to go back for my laptop and work files. Zoe offered to come, but I told her not to. I don't know why. Maybe I didn't want her to see how wrecked I was, or how much I needed to know if he was still there. When I unlocked the door, the smell hit me first. Sweat, dust, and something else, something faintly metallic like rust. The lights flickered when I turned them on, and I noticed the air felt warmer, heavier, like someone had been inside recently. The duct-taped hatch? Torn open. Not ripped apart dramatically, but peeled back in neat lines. The tape hung like limp skin, my throat closed up. I backed toward the door. My phone was already in my hand, but then I heard it. A cough, a single low, wet cough coming from inside the walls. I didn't think. I just ran. Down the stairs, out the front door, across the parking lot to my car. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my keys twice before I could start the engine. As I was about to pull out, I glanced up at my living room window. The curtain moved, not the way it does from a draft. It twitched, like someone had brushed it with their fingers. I drove straight to Zoe's and told her everything. She believed me this time. We called the cops again, and this time they actually sent 2 patrol cars. I followed them back, heart pounding. They searched the attic, the closets, the crawl space, nothing. But they found something else. The small square of drywall behind my bedroom dresser had been cut open. Behind it, there was a narrow passage leading into the inner structure of the building. I'd been living next to a hollow space big enough for someone to crawl through. The officer shone his flashlight in and muttered, "This goes behind 3 units. Someone could move between apartments in here." They asked if I wanted to file a report. I said yes, of course. But as I was signing, one of the officers frowned and pointed to the wall. There were markings, small ones scratched into the wooden studs. Letters carved deep, it was my name. Over and over. Megan. Shaky, uneven, written like a child who couldn't stop. That's when I realized this wasn't random. Whoever had been living up there knew me. They told me I could stay somewhere else until maintenance sealed everything, but I didn't have anywhere permanent to go. Zoe's place was tiny. My parents lived 3 states away. I checked into a cheap motel near the highway. That night I couldn't sleep. Every time a truck passed outside, I jolted awake. My nerves were shot. Around 3 a.m., I heard a faint buzz, my phone vibrating on the nightstand. It was a text from an unknown number. "You shouldn't have locked me out." I stared at the screen, mouth dry. The number wasn't saved, but something about it looked familiar. I scrolled back through old messages until I found one from Tyler, my ex, the one I thought might have had a key. Same area code. Same pattern. I texted back, "What do you want?" No reply. Just those 3 dots for a full minute. Then they disappeared. A minute later, another message came through. "You left your window open." I froze. My motel room did have a window, a small one by the bed. I turned toward it. The curtain was fluttering slightly. I couldn't tell if it was from the air conditioning or something else. When I crept closer, the breeze stopped. The curtain stilled. And there, faint but clear, were fingerprints on the inside of the glass. I stepped back, every instinct screaming. I grabbed my keys, bolted out of the room, and drove until sunrise. By the time I returned to the apartment complex the next morning, police tape blocked my building's door. My stomach dropped. One of the officers recognized me and pulled me aside. "You shouldn't be here, ma'am," he said. "What happened?" He hesitated. Then, maintenance went in early to seal the walls. They found someone. My chest went tight. Found who? A man. In the wall cavity behind your unit. Looked like he'd been there a while. I couldn't speak. The officer lowered his voice. He wasn't alive. But here's what still doesn't make sense. They showed me a photo of the man's ID. It wasn't Tyler. I'd never seen him before. And when they pulled him out, they found a phone in his hand, The phone had one text draft open, unsent. It said, "She's not alone up here." They told me I didn't have to see it, but I insisted. I needed to know. Needed to see the man who'd been living inches above my head, listening to me sleep, eating my food, watching me through tiny cracks in the drywall. He didn't look real when they pulled him out. His skin was grayish, his hair long and greasy, clothes stiff with dust and sweat. The officer said he'd likely been dead for a few days. Dehydration, probably. He'd been trapped when the wall section collapsed. But I kept thinking about that last text. She's not alone up here. It played in my head on a loop. Who was she? Me? Someone else? They let me back in once the scene was cleared. Everything smelled like bleach and drywall powder. The hatch was gone, sealed shut with plywood. I told myself it was over, but the silence felt wrong. Too thick, too full. That night I stayed in a hotel again. Clean sheets, constant hum of the AC, no ceiling creaks. But at around 2 a.m., I woke up drenched in sweat. I didn't know why at first. Then I heard it, faint rhythmic tapping. It wasn't coming from the window or the hallway. It was above me. 3 taps. Pause. 3 more. I turned on the light. The sound stopped instantly. I tried to laugh it off, old trauma, paranoia, whatever. But when I stood up to check, I saw something that made my stomach twist. On the nightstand next to my phone was a small metal paperclip, bent open, the same kind that had fallen from the attic hatch that first night. I didn't touch it. I just stood there staring at it until my eyes burned. I knew I hadn't brought it with me. I'd left everything behind. The next day, the police called me back in. They'd been going through the man's things and what little there were, and found something strange. A notebook. Most of it was scribbles, half-sentences, and drawings of my apartment layout, but near the back there were a few clear lines. She doesn't talk to me, but she moves at night. She lives in the vents. I can hear her crawling. She told me to stay quiet when the woman's home. My stomach dropped as I read. She lives in the vents. I asked the detective if they'd found anyone else. He said no, but they were still checking the crawl spaces. That night I couldn't sit still. I scrolled through old maintenance records, anything I could find online about the building. Nothing. But then I found a thread, a local Reddit post from 5 years ago. Someone had written about strange noises in the same complex, about missing food, about footsteps in the attic. The post ended suddenly. No replies after that. The username was just Attic Girl. I didn't sleep for days. Every sound made my skin crawl. Every creak, every gust of wind felt like a whisper. I tried to convince myself the man had been alone, that he'd imagined the woman in the vents, until the night I went back one last time. I don't even know why I did it. Closure, maybe. I wanted to see the place sealed, empty, final. The unit was dark, stripped bare. The air smelled stale. My footsteps echoed. I walked to the center of the living room and looked up at where the attic hatch used to be. That's when I heard it again. A faint shuffle, not from above this time, but behind me, drywall crackling. Slow, deliberate movement inside the wall. I whispered, "Hello?" Silence. Then from right behind the plaster near my ear, a woman's voice, hoarse, almost a whisper, said, "You were loud." I stumbled backward, heart pounding. The wall made a soft, almost giggling sound, like laughter muffled by insulation. I ran. I didn't look back. I moved across the state a week later. New apartment. New locks. No attics, no crawl spaces. I told myself it's done. But every night right before I fall asleep, I swear I hear faint tapping somewhere in the distance. 3 taps. Pause, 3 more. I've tried to ignore it. But last night I found something under my bed. A small paperclip bent open, covered in dust, and next to it, written in tiny letters on the underside of the bed frame, "Don't close the hatch." The smell was what got me first. Not rotten exactly, more like old sweat and damp carpet. It seeped out from the vent under my new apartment's sink the very first night I moved in. The place was supposed to be temporary. 6 months tops. I'd just transferred to a new city for work, and the building manager had offered me a quiet 1-bedroom end of hall. Cheap rent. The lease paperwork said Unit 4B. But the door had a small brass plate screwed into it that read, 41. When I asked about it, the manager just smiled. "Old numbering system," he said. "Don't worry about it." That was the first thing that felt off. The second came around 2 a.m. when I woke up to the faint sound of breathing, not mine. Not the kind that echoes in your head when you're half asleep. This was real, steady, from somewhere near the floor. I lay there staring at the ceiling, trying to place it, a soft in, out, in, out. When I turned on the lamp, it stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. The next morning, I noticed the vent cover under the sink was loose. One screw missing, another hanging by a thread. I crouched down and shined my phone light inside. The tunnel stretched deeper than I expected, past the plumbing into pitch black. I could smell it again. That faint, stale sweat odor mixed with something metallic. I called the landlord and left a message. No response. By that evening, I'd convinced myself it was raccoons or rats. I shoved a towel in front of the vent to block the smell and noise. But later, when I went to make coffee, the towel was gone. Not kicked aside. Gone. That's when I started paying attention. The building itself was old, probably 1950s, with long, narrow hallways that echoed when you walked. The carpets were thin and faded, and the air always smelled faintly of dust and bleach. There were 8 units on my floor, but I rarely saw anyone, except for the guy in 4C, tall, quiet, with deep shadows under his eyes. The first time I ran into him, he startled me. Just appeared at the end of the hallway as I was unlocking my door. He nodded, said nothing, then disappeared inside his unit. But what stuck with me was how thin he looked, like someone who didn't get much sun or much food. A few days later, I came home from work to find my door slightly open. Not much, just a few inches. I froze in the hall. My hand was shaking so bad I almost dropped my phone. Inside, everything looked normal at first, but the smell was back, stronger. And when I checked the kitchen, I found my coffee mug, the one I'd used that morning, sitting inside the sink, clean and dry. I hadn't washed it. That night, I pushed a chair against the front door and slept with the lights on. 3 nights later, the breathing came back. But this time it wasn't coming from under the sink. It was closer. I woke to the faint click, click, click of something metal scraping against the wall behind my bed. I held my breath, listening. Then a soft thud, like a hand pressing against drywall. I whispered, "Hello?" Nothing. But the sound shifted, moved, slowly, like someone crawling. I jumped out of bed, grabbed my phone, and turned on the flashlight. The light caught a faint bump in the wall, a panel I'd never noticed before. A small square about 2 feet across, painted the same dull beige as everything else. There was a latch, I don't know why, but I reached for it. Maybe part of me needed to prove it was just pipes, just nothing. The metal was cold. When I lifted the latch, the panel gave a little. Just enough to release a puff of hot, stale air, and then I heard it. A whisper. So faint I almost thought it was the wind. "Close it." I slammed the panel shut so fast I scraped my knuckles. I backed away, heart hammering. The whisper hadn't sounded angry. It sounded tired. I barely slept that night. The next morning, I called maintenance again. No one picked up. When I went downstairs to the office, the door was locked, lights off. A handwritten sign said, "Back tomorrow, emergency only." When I asked the old woman from 3A if she'd seen the landlord, she frowned. "You mean Mark? Honey, he hasn't been here in weeks. Some kind of family thing." I told her someone was in my walls. She laughed. That weird, nervous kind of laugh that makes you feel stupid for even saying it. But before she went back inside, she said something that made my blood go cold. "You're in 41, right? You know nobody's supposed to be in that unit." I blinked. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "That crawl space runs under a few of the old rooms. They sealed them years ago after something happened. You probably just heard rats." She closed the door before I could ask anything else. That night, I couldn't bring myself to turn off the lights. I sat on the floor with my back to the wall, listening. Every creak made my skin crawl. Around 1 a.m., I heard the latch on the panel click slowly, gently, like someone testing if I was awake. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. The panel stayed closed, but the air in the room changed, thickened. And then I heard that voice again. This time closer, right behind the wall. "Don't tell them I'm here." Part 2. I didn't sleep after that. I sat with my back to the opposite wall until daylight bled through the blinds. Every time the building creaked, my heart jumped. When morning finally came, I packed a small bag and left for work early. Anything to be somewhere normal, somewhere bright. But the whole day I couldn't stop thinking about that voice. The way it sounded wasn't ghostly or echoing. It was real. breath behind it, words forming against plaster. When I got home that night, the hallway lights were flickering again. One of the bulbs near my door buzzed like a dying fly. The smell, that sour human smell, that hit me before I even turned the key. And the panel by my bed? It was open, only a few inches, but enough to show darkness beyond it. I called 911. My voice was shaking so hard the operator had to ask me to repeat my address twice. 2 officers showed up within 20 minutes. They checked the crawl space with flashlights. One of them, a younger guy, crouched low and shone his beam through the narrow tunnel. "Can't see much," he said. "Just insulation and wiring. No footprints." "But the panel was open," I said. "Someone's been inside the walls." He nodded like he'd heard that 1,000 times before. "We'll file a report. Probably a maintenance worker who forgot to close it up." They left after 10 minutes. I stood there staring at the wall until the shadows in the corners started to look like faces. Around midnight, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop calling them. You're going to ruin it." I stared at the screen, heart hammering. No name, no context. Just that one line. I tried calling the number back, but it went straight to voicemail. One of those automated voices saying the inbox was full. When I looked at the wall again, I could swear I heard faint laughter. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed proof. Something I could show the police that they couldn't shrug off. So I set up my phone camera again, just like I'd done in my old place once for a mouse problem. I positioned it on my nightstand, aimed straight at the panel, hit record, and went to stay in my car overnight. The next morning I checked the footage. For the first hour, nothing. Just stillness. Then around 3:12 a.m., the panel slowly eased open. A pale hand reached out, thin, almost bony. It pressed against the floor, and for a moment you could see a face in the darkness. A man's face, gaunt and hollow-eyed, whispering something I couldn't hear. Then, just before he pulled back, his eyes flicked toward the camera, straight at it, and he smiled. I dropped my phone so fast it hit the floor and cracked the case. When I replayed the video again, something new caught my eye. Behind him, deep in the tunnel, there was movement. Another figure, smaller, hunched and crouched behind him in the dark, watching. I showed the video to the police. They said it was likely trespassing, maybe a squatter using old duct access. But when they searched the crawl space again, they found nothing. Just a dirty blanket and an empty food wrapper. The smaller figure wasn't mentioned in their report. That night, I taped the panel shut with layers of duct tape, shoved a dresser in front of it, and tried to sleep on the couch. At some point around 2 a.m., I must have dozed off, because I woke up to the sound of someone humming, not from the wall, from the vent above the couch. It was a low, tuneless hum, like someone trying to remember a melody. I stood up slowly, staring at the vent. My pulse pounded in my throat. I climbed onto the coffee table, leaned close, and whispered, "Who's there?" The humming stopped. Then a whisper. Female this time. "He said you'd listen." I jumped off the table and stumbled back. The vent rattled softly, like something shifting inside it. I ran to the kitchen, grabbed a chair, and slammed it against the vent cover. Metal shrieked. Dust fell. I tore the whole thing off and pointed my flashlight inside. The duct was empty, except for one thing, a small, folded scrap of paper wedged into the metal grating. I pulled it out, unfolded it with shaking hands. There were only 3 words written in messy pencil. "Check under sink." I didn't want to. I knew I shouldn't. But curiosity has a way of mixing with fear until you can't tell them apart. So I crouched down, opened the cabinet doors, and looked. The vent there, the one that always smelled, had been unscrewed completely. Behind it, a narrow hole opened into darkness, and from that darkness something moved. Slow. Careful. A pale hand again, but smaller this time. Feminine. Nails bitten to the quick. I froze. My flashlight trembled. The hand reached out and gently pushed something toward me. A piece of old paper folded like an envelope. Then it disappeared. I left the note on the counter and backed away like it might explode. He's not the only one. I read it over and over until the words lost shape. My mind kept jumping back to the video. That second shape behind the man crouched in the dark. I told myself it was a trick of the light, A reflection, anything, but now I wasn't sure what was real anymore. The police didn't want to come out again. They said they'd already cleared the crawl space, found nothing dangerous, and warned me about false reports. I tried showing them the note, but the older officer just sighed. "Ma'am, this building's ancient. Homeless squatters break in all the time. Just stay somewhere else a few nights." I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I couldn't afford a hotel, and Zoe, the one friend I had here, Sarah, was out of town. So I stayed. That night, I shoved towels under the doors, blasted white noise on my phone, and sat with my back against the wall, clutching a hammer I'd found in the utility closet. Nothing happened for hours. And then, just before dawn, my phone buzzed, motion detected. The camera I'd left running in the kitchen, the one aimed at the vent under the sink, had picked up movement. I opened the app, hands shaking. At first I only saw shadows. Then the vent grill shifted and a face appeared. Not the man this time, a woman. Her skin was filthy, her hair matted and long, eyes so wide they didn't look human anymore. She crawled halfway out, looked around the kitchen, then whispered something I couldn't hear. Then she froze, turned her head slowly toward the camera, and smiled. Her teeth were black at the edges, gums raw. She lifted a finger to her lips, shh, then crawled back inside. The feed went still. I didn't go near that kitchen. I sat in the hallway until the sun rose, then packed a bag and drove to a diner across town. My hands wouldn't stop shaking long enough to eat. I called the landlord again, straight to voicemail. When I looked up the property records online, I found something strange. Unit 41 wasn't even listed on the current floor plan. It jumped from 4A to 4C. I called the city building office. After a long hold, a tired clerk told me, "That crawl space was supposed to be sealed off years ago. There used to be a maintenance access between 4B and 4C, but it's condemned now." "Condemned why?" I asked. He hesitated. "An incident. Some guy went missing doing repairs back in the 80s. They never found him." When I got back that evening, the hall felt colder, quieter. The bulb above my door was out, and the carpet was damp like something had leaked underneath. Inside, everything looked the same, until I saw the dresser. It had been moved, dragged away from the wall, the tape torn loose, the panel behind it open again. I backed toward the door, but something stopped me. A faint sound, not breathing this time, humming. The same tune from the night before. I raised the hammer and whispered, "Who's there?" The humming stopped. Then a voice, hoarse, broken, "Please don't leave. He doesn't like when you leave." I froze. "Who doesn't?" Silence. Then from deep in the wall, a whisper that made my skin crawl. "The one who built it." I don't remember running. I just remember ending up outside in the rain, barefoot, shaking so hard I could barely dial my phone. The operator said they'd send someone. When the police finally searched the unit again, they found the crawl space widened. Sections of drywall had been cut out from the inside. The passage ran through the walls of 3 apartments and into a hidden sublevel that wasn't on any blueprint. They found bones down there. Some were decades old. Some weren't. They said it looked like someone had been living among them for years, carving tunnels, rearranging insulation, building little rooms. When they asked if I'd left anything behind I needed to retrieve, I said no. I didn't even want to see the place again. A week later, I was in a new apartment across town. New locks, new floors, new everything. But the nightmares didn't stop. I kept seeing that woman's face, the way her eyes followed the camera, the way she'd whispered, "Shh." Then one morning, I got a voicemail. It was static at first, then a faint scraping sound like metal against concrete. And just before it ended, a woman's voice, barely audible, said, "They moved the walls again." I dropped my phone. When I picked it up, the voicemail was gone. No record of it. No missed call, nothing. It's been 3 weeks now. Every night I check the vents in my new place. Make sure nothing's loose, no air moving when it shouldn't. But last night, I woke up to the faintest sound, 3 taps from inside the wall beside my bed. I held my breath, waited, then a whisper, low and close, like someone pressing their mouth right to the drywall. 41 isn't finished. I thought moving fixed it. For a while it almost did. New walls, new ceilings. No memories of that whispering place where air ducts breathed and plaster shifted like skin. But every building has its own language. You start to learn the rhythm, The way the pipes tick when the water heater kicks in, how the fridge hums through the night. Then you notice when something changes. It started with the smell, that same sour human smell, faint, just enough to make me check the trash twice. It came from the bathroom, behind the mirror. I told myself I was imagining it. That smell was from the old place, a trick of memory. But the mirror had condensation on it even when I hadn't showered, and sometimes when I wiped it clean, there were fingerprints on the other side of the glass. I called the landlord again. She said there was no crawl space behind that wall, just concrete, plumbing, and insulation. But when the plumber came 2 days later, he stared at the blueprint on his tablet, frowned, and said quietly, "That can't be right. This shows an access cavity between the units." He left to check the basement. Didn't come back. They said he probably left early. His van was gone by morning, but that night I heard something through the drain. A hollow clinking like metal tapping metal. Then the faintest voice, traveling up through the pipes. "You shouldn't have left." I started hearing scratching next. Light at first, like mice. Then louder, deliberate. I pressed my ear to the wall, breath held, and heard whispering. Not words at first, just sounds. But the longer I listened, the more it started to form sentences. "He's still building. She helps him now." Every time I heard that, I taped the vent shut, sealed the cracks, sprayed foam in every gap I could find. But in the morning, the tape would be peeled back and etched into the plaster, right beside my bed, were those same numbers again. 41. I recorded one last video, a shaky phone clip just before I left. You can hear me whispering, "See? There's no one here, just walls." Then the sound starts, a slow scraping, like fingernails dragging behind the drywall, and at the end of the clip, right before it cuts off, a voice says clearly, "We found you again." That was 3 nights ago. Now I'm staying with a friend. She doesn't believe me, not really. She thinks it's trauma, leftover paranoia. She says, walls don't follow people, but this morning she called me from work. Said she heard tapping in her guest room. Said she found a vent under the window she'd never noticed before. And when she shined a flashlight inside, she swore she saw something move. She sent me a photo, grainy, dark, but I can see it clear as day, etched on the metal vent cover, in the same shaky hand as before. Crawlspace 41. I keep thinking about what that woman whispered. He's not the only one. Maybe she meant the man in the walls. Or maybe she meant people like me, people who heard them once and can never stop listening. Sometimes when the house is quiet, I can still hear the faint rhythm of nails against plaster. Slow, steady, like someone mapping a new tunnel. They're not building there anymore. They're building here. The first night I moved in, I heard breathing through the wall behind my bed. It wasn't pipes or wind or the old building settling. I know what breathing sounds like. Slow, steady, wet around the edges, like whoever it was trying hard not to be heard. I froze, half sitting up in bed staring at the chipped white paint in the dark. I could almost feel it, a faint exhale pushing through the plaster, warm and damp. It stopped when I held my breath, started again when I exhaled, like it was listening to me. The place was a studio above a laundromat, cheap, noisy, smelled like detergent and burnt lint. But I'd just gotten out of a breakup and needed something temporary. The landlord, a short guy named Mr. Tiller, showed me the unit like it was a joke. "Walls are thin, don't mind the smell, you'll get used to it," he said. But he didn't tell me the walls had lungs. By day 2, I started noticing things. Tiny flakes of plaster on the floor near the bed. The faint sound of scratching, like a nail dragging behind the paint. And once, just once, I thought I heard someone laugh. I moved the bed away from the wall after that, but I could still hear it when I tried to sleep. A dry, rasping sound that came and went like someone shifting their weight on the other side. I even tried knocking once like an idiot. "Hello?" For a few seconds, nothing. Then 3 slow knocks came back. Tap, tap, tap. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I asked the lady downstairs, the one who ran the laundromat, if she ever heard things in the walls. She looked at me for a long time, then shook her head. That room shouldn't even be rented. He said he sealed it up after the incident. What incident? I asked. She hesitated. You should talk to Tiller. When I found him later that day, Mr. Tiller was fixing a leak in the hallway sink. His hands were shaking, though he tried to hide it. Hey, I said. The lady downstairs mentioned something about an incident in my unit. He didn't look up. That was years ago. What happened? He wiped his hands on a rag. Some guy used to live there, loner. Complained about the same thing you're saying, noises in the walls. I checked. There was nothing. One night he called me saying he found a door behind his bed. Next day, he was gone. A door? He sighed. Don't start digging around, all right? It's just an old building. That night, I pushed my bed even farther from the wall and slept with my phone flashlight on. At around 2:30 a.m., I woke to a faint scratching again. But this time, it wasn't behind the wall. It was under the paint. A soft, crackling sound, like someone's finger dragging slow circles beneath the surface. I sat up, pulse hammering, watching as the paint near the center of the wall began to bubble. Tiny flakes fell away. Then, in a patch the size of my palm, something pressed outward from underneath. A shape, a hand, I think, pale and flat, pushing against the plaster just enough to crack it. I screamed and stumbled out of bed, slamming the light switch on. The hand vanished. All that was left was the dent. A faint outline of fingers splayed beneath the paint, frozen there. I called Tiller the next morning and told him I was done. I'd move out, keep my deposit, I didn't care. He said he'd stop by after work to check the wall, but he didn't sound surprised. When I hung up, I noticed something new. The wall had tiny slits in it, thin as paper cuts. And from one of them, something dark was leaking. At first, I thought it was water, but when I touched it, it was tacky. Red-brown. Blood. That night, I slept on the couch. Around midnight, the power went out. I sat in total blackness, phone light shaking in my hand. Then, a slow dragging sound came from the bedroom. It wasn't the wall this time, it was the bed, moving. I crept to the doorway and froze. The bed was sliding inch by inch back toward the wall. The dented spot, that handprint, was flexing, pushing outward. And from the darkness, a whisper so soft it felt like breath against my ear. Don't cover the door. I didn't go back into that room until morning. When I finally worked up the nerve, sunlight was cutting through the blinds in long, dusty beams, and the wall looked wrong. The dent was still there, but it wasn't just a dent anymore. The paint had cracked wider overnight, curling at the edges like dead skin. Underneath, the plaster was darker, almost gray. I could see something behind it. A gap, a shadow. I told myself it was just moisture damage. But the memory of that whisper, "Don't cover the door," stuck in my head like a splinter. So like an idiot, I grabbed a screwdriver and started scraping. At first, the plaster came off in flakes, then chunks. Behind it was wood, old, splintered, blackened with age, and in the center of that wooden surface was a seam, a vertical line. A door, small, maybe 4 feet tall, built directly into the wall behind the bed. Someone had plastered right over it. My stomach dropped. I ran to get my phone and snapped a photo, proof that it was really there, before I even thought about opening it. Then, because curiosity is stronger than fear when you're alone too long, I pried at the seam. The edge gave way with a dry pop, and the door creaked open just an inch. That was enough. The smell that came out was the worst thing I've ever breathed in. Rot and mildew and something human, like sweat soaked into fabric that had been sealed for years. I gagged and stumbled back, covering my mouth. The air was thick, heavy, and inside, darkness. I shined my phone light into the gap. What I saw wasn't a crawl space. It was a room. It couldn't have been more than 6 feet deep. The walls were wood, unpainted, with insulation hanging down like cobwebs. A small, filthy mattress sat in the corner, covered with a tattered blanket. On the floor, scattered papers, drawings. All of them were of me. Crude pencil sketches, me sleeping, me brushing my hair, me standing at the sink. Some were dated. One said last night in smudged graphite. That's when I dropped my phone. The light swung wildly across the little room, and I saw something else. A camera, pointed straight through a small hole in the wall, right where my bed used to be. I screamed and kicked the door shut, backed into the hallway, shaking. I could barely breathe. Someone had been living inside that wall, watching me, drawing me, and the landlord knew. I drove straight to Mr. Tiller's house, a small one-story place about 10 minutes away. His truck was in the driveway. I didn't even knock politely. I pounded on the door until he opened it. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "You knew someone was in there," I yelled. "You plastered over it and rented it out anyway." He didn't answer right away. He just rubbed a hand over his face, eyes wet and tired. "I didn't know he was still there," he said finally. "I thought it was sealed for good." "Who?" He hesitated. "His name was Evan. He was the tenant before you. Lived there for almost 3 years. Said he liked the quiet. Then he started talking about voices, someone living behind the wall. Next thing I know, he's gone. Cops never found him. I patched it up and moved on." I stared at him. "You patched him in." His eyes flicked up, desperate. "You don't understand. That wall's not supposed to be there. That whole room, it isn't on any plan. They built it after the fire." "What fire?" He shook his head. "You need to leave that place tonight." When I got back, the apartment door was open. The lights were off, even though I'd left them on. I called out, "Hello?" But my voice came out thin. Then I saw it, muddy footprints across the carpet. Bare feet, leading from the wall to the middle of the room, and back again, and the little wooden door. It was open, just enough for someone to slip inside. I backed toward the hallway, fumbling for my phone, but before I could dial, I heard a sound that froze me in place. A soft, wet inhale, breathing, coming from behind me. I turned, slow, heart hammering so hard I thought it might burst. The closet door, the one opposite the wall, was open an inch. And through that gap, I saw an eye, pale, glassy, unblinking, watching me. I didn't scream. Not right away. The eye blinked once, slow, like it was measuring me, deciding what I was worth. Then it disappeared, and the closet door creaked wider. I ran. I don't even remember grabbing my keys, just the sting of cold air when I burst outside barefoot, the street lamps buzzing overhead. I sat in my car shaking so hard I dropped the keys twice before the engine caught. I didn't stop driving until the laundromat was a blur in the rearview mirror. I crashed on my coworker's couch that night, lying awake until dawn, jumping at every noise. But sometime around 6 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text. Unknown number. You shouldn't have opened it. I stared at the screen, my heart punching against my ribs. The typing dots blinked for a few seconds. Then another message appeared. He doesn't like the light. I dropped the phone. By the time I went back to the apartment, the sun was up. I didn't even want to go inside, but I needed to grab my stuff, my ID, anything that proved who I was. The front door was closed this time, locked even. Inside, everything was quiet. Too quiet. The air smelled stale, sour, like old wood and something faintly metallic. I moved toward the bedroom slowly, each step creaking. The closet door was open now, completely, but the little wall door behind the bed had been sealed shut again. Fresh plaster, still wet. My stomach turned. Someone had come back, and whoever it was, they'd cleaned up. The mattress was gone. The drawings, the camera, even the footprints were scrubbed away. But the smell, that smell of rot, was stronger than ever. I followed it to the corner near the floor. The baseboard looked warped, slightly darker than the rest. When I knelt down, I saw something wedged between the cracks, a strip of fabric. It was part of a shirt sleeve. And on the cuff, written in faded marker, was a name. Evan. My throat closed. I stumbled back, hand shaking. The missing tenant. He hadn't vanished. He was still here. That's when the lights flickered, once, twice, then went out. In the dark, I heard movement, slow and deliberate, from behind the wall. A dragging sound like something heavy shifting its weight against wood, then a voice, a muffled but close. You woke him up. I bolted for the door, but it slammed before I could reach it. Something hit the floor behind me, heavy, scraping. I turned, phone flashlight trembling in my hand. The little wall door, the one I'd seen sealed up not 30 seconds ago, was open again. A face leaned through it. Not a ghostly face, not something impossible. Just a man, gaunt, filthy, with eyes so sunken they barely reflected the light. His lips were cracked, his skin smeared with dust and blood. "Evan," I whispered before I even realized I'd said it. He tilted his head, like the word hurt to hear. "Don't call me that." His voice was raw, shredded from disuse. "What do you want?" I asked. He smiled, small and broken. "I just wanted quiet." But he doesn't sleep. Then something moved behind him, a shape, bigger, shifting in the dark of the hidden room. Evan turned suddenly, eyes wide, whispering, "Go." Then a hand knocked. His reached from the shadows and yanked him backwards so fast he vanished. The little door slammed shut, shaking the wall. I ran. I didn't stop until I was halfway down the street. I called 911 again, gasping out the address, the name, the door, the thing behind it. By the time they arrived, the unit was quiet. They searched. The apartment, the walls, the crawl space behind the plaster. No secret room. No tunnel. Just solid wood and insulation. They told me I was lucky. Probably a squatter. Just hallucinations from stress. I wanted to believe them. But when I checked my phone that night, there was a new photo in my camera roll. One I didn't take. It showed my bed from inside the wall, and under the photo was a file name I'll never forget. Door is open JPG. I didn't sleep. Not that night, not the next. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that photo. The view from inside the wall. The dust, the wood grain, the faint outline of my body in the dark. I tried deleting it. It came back. 3 times. By the 4th, the image had changed slightly. The angle was closer, like whoever was behind the wall was moving toward me. I threw the phone across the room. I went to stay with my coworker again, but even there, I couldn't escape the feeling of being watched. Every apartment hum, every settling creak felt too deliberate, too rhythmic, as if walls everywhere breathed the same slow pulse. That 3rd night, I woke up around 3 a.m. to find the TV flickering, static. In the reflection of the screen behind me, I saw movement, a faint shimmer near the drywall, like heat waves rippling across paint. When I turned around, it was gone. But written across the wall, faintly, in what looked like charcoal, were words I didn't recognize at first. "He's still hungry." I left, just left. Got in my car and drove until the sun came up. I didn't have a destination, just this instinct that if I stayed still, he'd find me again. By morning, I stopped at a roadside motel, one of those places that smelled like bleach and cigarettes. I told myself I'd rest for 1 hour, then figure out where to go. The walls there were thin, too. I could hear the couple arguing next door, the hum of a vending machine, the buzz of a dying light bulb. But under it all, there was something else. That faint breathing again, not from the next room, from inside the wall. I pressed my ear to it, holding my breath. There it was. Slow, heavy, steady. Then a whisper, soft enough to almost sound like memory. "He doesn't like the light." My stomach turned cold. I pulled back fast and flicked on every lamp, the TV, even the bathroom light. The whisper stopped. The air felt still again. I sat on the edge of the bed, shaking, phone clutched in my hand like a weapon. And that's when I noticed it. On the nightstand, a folded piece of paper. I hadn't put it there. I opened it with trembling fingers. The handwriting was shaky but familiar. "Evan says thank you. You opened the way." I didn't remember falling asleep, but when I woke up, it was still dark. The clock on the wall flashed 12 ike, power outage. Every light in the room was off, and from the corner where the wallpaper had peeled slightly came the faintest rustle, like fingers sliding underneath it. The paper-thin sound grew louder. Then the wall moved. just barely, a bulge pushing from inside. A shape pressed against the wallpaper, a head, shoulders, the faint outline of a person trying to step through. I scrambled for my phone, hit the flashlight, and aimed it. The wall stopped moving. For a second, I thought I'd imagined it. Then the bulge shifted away from the light, flattening again, retreating like something burned. He doesn't like the light. That phrase echoed through my skull. I grabbed the lamp, ripped the shade off, and kept it pointed at the wall until sunrise. By morning, the wallpaper was scorched slightly, faint dark spots where the shape had been. I packed my things and left without checking out. That was 3 months ago. I've moved twice since. I don't tell landlords my real name anymore, but it doesn't matter. 2 nights ago, I woke up to find the lamp in my room flickering, just for a second. And when I turned toward the sound, I saw it again, the faint ripple under the paint. Breathing. It's subtle, patient, almost tender, like it's waiting for me to forget the light. And I think I understand now what Tiller meant when he said that room wasn't supposed to exist, because it isn't just that building. It's every wall that's ever been sealed, every space hidden between plaster and studs. Whatever he is, he moves through them, through silence, through darkness, through every little cavity we pretend isn't there. He doesn't like the light, but walls don't need light, they just need you to sleep. The first time I heard the noise, I thought it was just the building settling. That's what I always tell tenants when they call at night. Old pipes, old air ducts, nothing to worry about. But that night, standing in the hallway outside apartment 9B, I knew it wasn't pipes. It was breathing low, ragged, and close enough that I could feel the vibration through the drywall. I work maintenance for the Harrington Towers, a 1950s high-rise that should have been condemned years ago. Paint flakes off in sheets, elevators jam between floors, and the ducts carry every sound like whispers in metal veins. The woman in 9B, Mrs. Green, had called in 6 noise complaints that month. "Something's crawling in my vents," she said. "Not mice, bigger. We'd set traps, checked filters, even replaced one of her ducts last week. Nothing." So when I clocked out around midnight and heard that wet, uneven breathing through the ceiling tiles, I knew I was the only one left who'd deal with it. I climbed onto a chair in the hallway, pushed up the metal grate, and aimed my flashlight into the duct dust everywhere. The smell of mildew and old copper. I expected to see insulation or maybe a raccoon's nest. Instead, I saw a piece of fabric caught on a screw, torn denim like the edge of someone's jeans, and right beside it, a fingernail human. I froze, one hand still on the edge of the vent. The air was cold up there, colder than the rest of the building, and I swear I heard something shift. Then, 3 quick thuds from deeper inside the duct, not random, patterned, like knocking. I nearly fell off the chair. My flashlight slipped, clattering to the floor. When I picked it up again, the sound was gone. Just a faint hiss, like someone exhaling from very far away. I sealed the grate back up and went downstairs to the boiler room, trying to convince myself it was an echo. Maybe an animal, maybe someone on another floor. But when I checked the blueprints, just to be sure, I realized something was wrong. The duct that ran over 9B wasn't supposed to connect to anything. It was sealed off, dead-ended behind the north wall, no access from above, no crawl space behind it, which meant that if someone was inside that duct, they'd been sealed in for a long time. The next morning, Mrs. Green cornered me in the lobby. Her eyes were red from lack of sleep. They were whispering again, she said. "In the vents." I heard them say my name this time. I promised I'd check again, even though every part of me wanted to avoid that floor entirely. But I couldn't stop thinking about the fingernail. The fabric, the cold, and those knocks. 3 in a row. Not random, not animal, a signal. That night I went back up with a ladder and a crowbar. The building was quiet, the kind of stillness that makes you aware of every breath. When I pulled the grate off again, I saw something new. A smear of dark, dried brown near the edge. Blood, maybe, and this time before I even lifted the flashlight. I heard it again. Tap, 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 3 knocks. Then silence, and from somewhere deeper in the duct, a faint voice. "Please don't close it again." I dropped the flashlight. It rolled toward the stairwell, the beam spinning across the cracked tile floor. When I looked back at the vent, a shadow moved inside. Long fingers curling around the edge. Pale skin stretched thin and dry like old paper. I ran, didn't even lock the door behind me, just sprinted down the stairwell until my knees hurt. In the lobby, the night guard glanced up, half asleep, and muttered, "You okay?" I couldn't answer. All I could hear was that voice replaying in my head, "Please don't close it again." I didn't go back up to the 9th floor for 2 days. Every time I thought about that voice, the way it came out of the duct, breathy but measured, like it knew how to talk through the metal, my stomach flipped, but ignoring it didn't help. By Thursday, the super told me we'd gotten 4 more noise complaints, not just from 9B now, 8C, 10A, and even the laundry room. All the same thing, scratching, whispering, tapping. He handed me a work order and said, "Get it fixed, and stop telling people ghost stories. Daylight makes fear feel stupid." That's what I told myself as I climbed back up the service ladder, crowbar in hand. The hallway looked different during the day, brighter, harmless. The vents gleamed silver, dust dancing in sunbeams from the cracked window at the end. Still, I hesitated before opening the grate again. When I finally pried it loose, the smell hit me first. Rot and something chemical, like old bleach. I shone the light inside. The denim scrap was gone. So was the fingernail. But scrawled along the duct wall in what looked like charcoal or soot were words. "It's not me in here." I froze. My first instinct was to think some kid broke in, but this was the 9th floor. No one could reach that duct without keys, a ladder, and a full set of tools. I started tracing the writing with the light, following it deeper into the duct. And that's when I saw a small object wedged near one of the joints, a Polaroid dusty, curled at the edges. I pulled it out and wiped it off on my sleeve. It was dark and grainy, but I could make out a man crouched in a metal tunnel, his face half in shadow, eyes wide, almost pleading. On the bottom of the photo, written in marker, was a date, 1987. My hands started shaking. The building had been open since the late 1950s, and in the back of my mind I remembered an old rumor, something about a tenant who went missing that year. A quiet guy on the maintenance crew who'd lived on site and disappeared. One night without a trace, nobody ever found him. The duct. Blueprints hadn't changed since the 80s. If that photo was real, he might still be in there, or someone else might have taken his place. I decided to open a bigger panel, one that led to the main junction above the laundry room. I figured if someone really was living in the ducts, that's where they'd have the most space. When I pulled the panel away, a gust of stale air poured out, and mixed in with it was something else, movement. Faint, shuffling movement like someone crawling backward deeper into the system. I clicked the flashlight toward it, catching a glimpse of bare skin disappearing around a bend. "Hey," I shouted. "Who's in there?" Silence, then tap, tap, tap. 3 knocks again, and a whisper. So faint I could barely make it out. "You shouldn't have come back." I stepped away fast, heart hammering, sweat running cold down my back. I slammed the panel shut and grabbed my radio, but before I could call it in, something banged hard against the inside of the duct. Once, then again. The whole metal sheet vibrated. Then a voice, louder this time, "Don't open the light." It wasn't angry. It sounded scared. I didn't understand what it meant until the light above me flickered. The fluorescent tubes crackled, flashing on and off in a stuttering rhythm. And in one of those brief blackouts, just for a heartbeat, I saw a face pressed against the vent slats, pale, wet, smiling too wide, then gone when the light came back. I ran to the basement, straight to the breaker room, and cut power to that floor. I didn't care what the super said. Nobody was going back up there. When I came back later that night to check, I found something taped to the door of the 9B utility closet, a Polaroid, another one. This time it wasn't a man in a tunnel. It was me, standing in the hallway that morning, flashlight raised, mouth open like I was about to speak, taken from inside the duct. I didn't show the photo to the super. What could I say, and that something inside the walls took a picture of me? He'd laugh, or worse, start asking if I'd been drinking on the job, but I couldn't stop looking at it. The angle, the framing, it wasn't random. Whoever took it had waited for me to climb that ladder, had aimed through the vent slit, and caught me in that exact second. I flipped the photo over. Nothing, just fingerprints, smeared in dust. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that whoever, or whatever, took it wanted me to know they were watching. That night, I went through the old maintenance logs. Harrington Towers has a basement office full of rotted files, moldy boxes, and yellowed blueprints from before I was born. After an hour of digging, I found it. 1987, Maintenance Personnel Incident Report. Employee, Stanley Stan Roker. Status, missing. Presumed dead. Notes, last seen near North Duct System, 9th floor. Comments, ventilation work suspended indefinitely, and scribbled at the bottom in pen was a line someone added later. Do not open. He's still moving. I stared at that for a long time. The ink had bled from age, but it was there. Someone had written it like a warning. I decided to check the original duct access that Stan had been working on, one that didn't appear on any modern blueprint. The panel was behind a row of old water heaters, sealed under 2 layers of paint. Took me 20 minutes to pry it loose. When it finally opened, a blast of cold air hit me in the face, not normal cold. Deep crawl space, earth cold. The kind that makes your breath hang. I aimed my flashlight in. The tunnel ran straight for maybe 20 feet, then curved sharply upward. The metal walls were slick with condensation. Something dark smeared the surface. Streaks of black that looked like mold until I realized they were finger marks. Long ones dragging upward. At the far end, just before the curve, I saw a patch of fabric pressed flat against the wall. It looked like a uniform. I crawled in far enough to grab it. The fabric peeled away with a wet sound. It was part of a maintenance shirt, just like mine. Name patch still hanging by a thread. Stan. There was something inside the pocket. I reached in and pulled out a small cracked cassette recorder. When I pressed play, a voice whispered through the static. Male, tired, shaking. If anyone finds this, don't open the ducts. Don't shine the light inside. He hates it. He lives in the metal, feeds on sound. When you look for him, he hears you. When you talk, he listens. A loud scrape interrupted the tape. Metal on metal, followed by a choked grunt. A struggle and then a single wet gasp, then nothing. I dropped the recorder and scrambled backward until I was out in the boiler room again, panting. Something moved in the duct above me. Not just a creak, a shift. A long, dragging sound like someone pulling themselves through tight metal space. I grabbed my radio. This is Mike, down in maintenance. We've got an issue in the 9th floor duct. Possible intruder. I need security. Static swallowed the rest. Then faintly under the crackle, a whisper came through. Please don't close it again. The same voice. I dropped the radio. The duct overhead rattled once, twice, and then something fell from the vent onto the floor beside me. A Polaroid. Fresh. It showed me kneeling there. Right now, flashlight in hand, mouth open mid-breath, taken from above. I bolted. Up the stairs, skipping 2 at a time until I hit the lobby. Mrs. Green was there again, pacing near the mailboxes, her hair unbrushed, her face pale. She looked at me like she'd been waiting. He's in my ceiling again, she whispered. He keeps saying my name. Before I could answer, we both froze. A loud clang echoed from the vent above the front desk. Then another, and another. Tap, tap, tap. 3 knocks. They weren't random anymore. They followed us. The banging didn't stop. It followed me down every hallway, echoing from vent to vent like something moving fast inside the walls. Mrs. Green grabbed my arm. He's coming, she said, voice shaking. You woke him up again. Before I could answer, the lights flickered. Once, twice. Then everything went black. I pulled out my flashlight and aimed it at the ceiling. The metal vents shimmered faintly, trembling. A low, guttural breath rolled through the ducts, deep enough to make the walls vibrate. Then from somewhere above us, a voice. You shouldn't have come back, Mrs. Green screamed. I dragged her toward the stairwell, but as we passed the 9B hallway, a gust of cold air blew through the open vent. It reeked like old meat and burnt wiring. Something slid out. Not a hand. Not exactly. More like fingers stretched too long. Skin gray and dry, nails black and broken. They flexed against the wall like spider legs. Searching for light. I swung the flashlight toward them. The hand jerked back fast, hissing against the beam like it was burning. He doesn't like the light, I muttered without meaning to. The words felt wrong in my mouth, like I was repeating someone else's memory. We bolted up the stairs to the 10th floor. Every vent we passed clattered in sequence, one after another, like something crawling behind them, keeping pace. Mrs. Green was crying. I could barely breathe. The air felt thick, metallic, humid with something that didn't belong in the building. When we reached the service hallway, I spotted the master vent control. If I shut it, I could cut airflow through the entire building, trap whatever was inside. I sprinted for it. The ducts groaned overhead, metal flexing, as if the thing knew what I was doing. I slammed the lever down. Every vent in the hall screamed, an awful metallic shriek that rattled the walls. Then silence. For a moment, I thought it was over. Then the lights flickered again and the floor vent near my feet popped open. A face stared up at me, gray, hair matted, mouth too wide, eyes completely black reflecting my flashlight like mirrors. It wasn't human, not anymore. But buried under the filth and rot, I saw the faint outline of a name patch melted into its shirt. Stan. You closed it again, it whispered. Its voice wasn't coming from its mouth. It came from everywhere, the ducts, the floor, the air around us. He doesn't like being closed. Then it lunged. I don't remember running. Just the sound of metal tearing open, the feel of air rushing past as vents exploded along the hallway. Mrs. Green's scream echoed behind me, then cut off. When I turned back, she was gone. Only her shoe remained lying near the open vent. Something was dragging her inside. I aimed the flashlight at it, saw her hand reaching out, fingers clawing the tile, and then the beam flickered. The last thing I saw before the light died was her being pulled upward, silently as the duct swallowed her whole. When the emergency lights came on, I was alone, the walls were still. The air vents hummed softly again like nothing had happened. I stumbled to the lobby, bleeding from a cut on my arm. The night guard was there, half asleep at his desk. He looked up and frowned. You all right? You look like hell. I opened my mouth to speak, then froze. Behind him, the vent above the front desk was open, and from the darkness inside, a single Polaroid drifted out, fluttering to the floor like ash. The guard picked it up, confused. When he turned it over, his face went pale. He handed it to me with shaking hands. It was me again, standing right here, right now, flashlight in hand, taken from inside the vent. The police came later. They said Mrs. Green probably had a mental break and ran off. They couldn't find any evidence of forced entry, no signs of struggle. The ducts, completely clean. No access points. No hidden crawl spaces. No trace of anyone inside, but I know what I heard. I know what I saw. And every night since, I've heard it again. Those 3 slow taps in the vents above my new apartment. Tap, tap, tap. Sometimes when I can't take it anymore, I whisper back, please don't close it again. And every time the air turns colder, like something's listening, like something's waiting. The baby monitor started crackling again around 2:17 a.m. Not the usual static. This was different. A low hum, steady, pulsing, almost like breathing. At first I thought it was interference. The house was old, 1940s build, and the outlets sometimes hissed when it rained. But then I heard it. A voice, faint, muffled, whispering from the monitor's speaker. Don't put her down here. I sat up so fast the monitor fell off the nightstand. We'd only lived here 2 weeks. My wife Tessa was still adjusting, trying to convince herself that every creak and pop was just the house settling. But it didn't feel like that. Something about this place always felt too alive. Like the walls were listening. When we moved the crib into the nursery, the smallest room in the house, we noticed the floorboards were uneven near the corner. Tessa joked that maybe the last owners hid money under there. Now I wasn't laughing. I walked into the nursery, phone flashlight cutting through the dark. The air was cold, colder than the rest of the house. The baby Lily was asleep, thank God. Tiny chest rising and falling, face peaceful. The baby monitor on the dresser still hummed. I turned it off. The hum kept going. Then from beneath the crib I heard it again. Don't put her down here. This time it was louder. I froze. My first thought, animal. Maybe a raccoon in the crawl space. Or pipes echoing through the floor, but the voice was human, soft, female, desperate. I crouched down, moved the crib aside, and pressed my ear to the warped boards. Silence. Then a faint tapping sound. 1, 2, 3. A pause. Then again, the same rhythm I'd heard in the monitor, like someone trying to get attention from the other side of a wall. I grabbed a screwdriver and pried up one of the boards. The smell hit me instantly. Damp, dusty air, stale like an old basement. I expected insulation, maybe dirt. Instead, I saw a small square cut into the foundation, a trapdoor, hidden perfectly beneath the nursery floor. It was maybe 3 feet wide, metal ring handle in the center. The edges were sealed with caulk that had long since dried and cracked. Someone had gone through a lot of effort to hide it. I called out softly. Hello? No answer. Just that same soft hum coming from somewhere below. Against every instinct in my body, I pulled the trap open. Cold air spilled out, carrying the scent of mildew and something faintly sweet, like decaying flowers. When I shined my light down, it hit concrete steps, narrow, damp, leading into darkness. I called out again. Is someone down there? Silence, then, faintly. She cries when the lights go out. I nearly dropped the flashlight. The voice was right beneath me now, close enough that it sounded like it was rising through the floor. I backed away fast, heart hammering, slamming the trap shut. Tessa appeared in the doorway, bleary-eyed, holding Lily. What the hell are you doing? I started but stopped myself. What could I even say? That someone was living under the nursery? That a stranger's voice had whispered warnings about our daughter? She frowned, seeing my face. You're pale. What's going on? I swallowed hard. Nothing, just bad wiring. She didn't believe me, I could tell. But she didn't press it. I couldn't sleep the rest of the night. Every time the house creaked, I imagined something shifting down there, breathing in rhythm with Lily's soft little sighs. By morning, the trapdoor was gone. I mean it. Gone. The floorboards I'd pried up, perfectly back in place, sealed as if they'd never been touched. Tessa swore she hadn't done anything. When I pressed my ear to the spot, the wood was warm, and from deep below I heard it, the faint sound of a lullaby, someone singing to our daughter. Part 2. I didn't say a word to Tessa the next morning. She already thought I was on edge from the move, and honestly, maybe I was. But I couldn't stop thinking about that voice, the way it came through the floor like someone whispering through the cracks. By 10 a.m., I'd made up my mind. If there really was something under that nursery, I needed to know what. So while Tessa was out walking Lily, I started digging. I checked the home records first. Tax files, old listings, even the inspection report. Nothing mentioned a basement or sub-level beneath the nursery. Just crawl space. But then I found the original blueprints scanned into the county archive. There it was. A small, unlabeled square directly beneath the northeast corner of the house, right under the nursery. A room that didn't exist on any modern plan. Next to it, in tiny handwriting, was a note. Access sealed. Per family request. Family request. That meant whoever lived here before us knew about it. I called the realtor who sold us the house. She sounded surprised to hear from me. Oh, the old Maple property? Everything okay? Yeah, I said, trying to sound casual. Just wondering if you knew anything about the previous owners. The Frasers? There was a long pause. Finally, she said, You didn't read the disclosure? What disclosure? Another pause. Then she sighed. They had a daughter. She died in that house, infant. I wasn't supposed to say anything. The family made me remove it from the listing. They moved out about 10 years ago. I hung up before she could say more. I didn't need more. I already felt sick. When Tessa got back, I tried to act normal. She set Lily down in the crib, humming softly. The sunlight through the curtains made the room look harmless again. But I could still feel it. That warmth under the floor, faint but constant, like something breathing through the wood. That night, I slept on the couch around 2 a.m. The monitor clicked on by itself, not the usual crackle. This time it was humming, soft, melodic. Then a woman's voice, quiet, close to the mic. She's mine now. I was upstairs before I even realized I'd moved. The nursery door was open, light spilling out. The crib was empty. My chest went cold. Tessa, I shouted. She came running from the bathroom, panicked. What? Where's Lily? her face drained of color. We both ran to the crib, empty. The blankets were still warm, and then we heard it, a muffled thump from below. The trapdoor was back. I don't remember grabbing tools or thinking it through. I just tore up the floorboards, hands shaking, heart hammering so hard I could barely hear. The metal ring handle was exactly where it had been 2 nights ago. I yanked it open. The same wet, cold air hit me, thick with mildew and rot, and from below, that humming lullaby soft. Tessa was crying. Where is she? I aimed my flashlight down the stairs. The beam caught on concrete and something pale moving at the bottom. A hand. Small. Lily's blanket was there, the one with the blue stars. I climbed halfway down before I froze, because the woman holding it wasn't my wife. She was sitting in the corner, long hair draped over her face, wearing a faded nightgown. The light made her look gray, translucent, her outline rippling faintly like heat above asphalt. She rocked something in her arms, Lily's blanket, and whispered, "She doesn't cry for me anymore," Tessa screamed. The sound made the woman's head snap up, her hair falling away to reveal a face that wasn't whole. It flickered. There, then gone, then there again. Eyes hollow, mouth moving but out of sync with the sound. Don't take her from me again. I grabbed Lily. She was crying, alive, wrapped in that blanket, and ran. I didn't stop until we were outside, standing barefoot in the yard, gasping for air. The trapdoor slammed shut behind us with a metallic clang that echoed through the ground. We left that night. No bags, no clothes. Just the baby and the car keys. Tessa didn't speak the entire drive. When we returned with police the next morning, the nursery floor was sealed again. Boards sanded smooth, varnished. Perfect, no sign of a trapdoor. The officer checked the crawl space and said, "No basement, no sublevel, no access point." You must have been dreaming, but I could still smell it. That rot and sweetness clinging to Lily's blanket. And later, when I held her, I felt something small and cold pressed against her onesie pocket. A photo. Faded Polaroid. It showed the nursery floor, open wide, and a woman smiling up from the darkness holding a baby that wasn't hers. We moved out 3 days later. The realtor called it buyer's remorse, but that didn't even come close. I told Tessa we were staying with my brother for a while, just until we figured out what to do. She didn't argue. She barely spoke at all anymore, but I couldn't stop thinking about that photo, that woman, the hollow eyes, the nightgown, the way she smiled like she knew she was being watched, and the baby in her arms. It wasn't Lily. It was older, pale, limp. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that picture. I heard her voice from the floor. "She doesn't cry for me anymore." And that whisper kept looping in my head. Not angry, not threatening, just heartbreakingly sad. That's what got to me the most. She didn't sound evil. She sounded lonely. A week later, I went back. I told Tessa I needed to sort things out with the realtor. That was a lie. I just needed to see that house one more time, to make sure the trapdoor was real, that I hadn't lost my mind. When I pulled into the driveway, the for sale sign was already up again. The grass had gone brown from neglect, and the curtains in the nursery were still drawn tight. The house looked dead. But when I unlocked the door, it didn't smell empty. It smelled like baby powder. I crept upstairs, my phone flashlight guiding the way. Every board creaked like a warning. The nursery door was half open. Inside and nothing. No crib, no toys, no monitor. Just that blank room with the pale wallpaper in the warped corner. I walked straight to it. Pressed my ear against the floor. Nothing. Then faintly. Tap, tap, tap. Same rhythm as before. 3 knocks, a pause. 3 more, I whispered. "Who are you?" Silence, then the hum started again. That same lullaby, quiet, trembling, broken. And this time it wasn't under the floor. It was behind the wall. I followed the sound to the far corner, where the drywall met the window trim. There was a faint seam there, a straight vertical line. Too perfect to be a crack. I pressed my palm to it, and it gave slightly. Hollow. There was a space behind it. I found a screwdriver in the hallway closet and started prying the molding away. The drywall cracked easily, crumbling in chunks. Behind it was an opening just wide enough for someone to crawl through. The smell hit me immediately. Mold, dust, something sickly sweet. I aimed my flashlight inside. Concrete, metal pipes. A thin trail of old blood smeared along the wall. And something else. A mattress. Tiny. Rusted crib frame beside it. I climbed in. The air felt wrong. Damp, but hot. Like breathing into a plastic bag. The light flickered against the low ceiling, revealing claw marks along the concrete. Not scratches from rats. Human nails. I found a stack of old Polaroids in a rusted tin box. My hands were shaking as I flipped through them. Each one was of the nursery. Different years, different cribs, different babies. The same woman was in all of them. Sometimes she was smiling, sometimes crying. Sometimes she was just standing behind the crib, her face half in shadow. The last photo stopped me cold. It was dated March 2nd, 2015, and it showed a young couple, us, standing in front of the house, smiling, except we hadn't moved in yet. That's when the hum stopped. I froze, listening. A whisper drifted through the opening, soft and close. "You took my home." Then a sudden slam, the sound of the nursery door closing behind me. The air in the crawl space shifted, pressure dropping so fast it made my ears pop. My flashlight flickered, then died completely, and in the dark, something brushed against my leg, cold, small, like a child's hand. I scrambled out, smashing through the drywall, coughing, bleeding from my palms. The nursery door wouldn't open. I kicked it again and again until it splintered outward. The house was breathing. That's the only way I can describe it. The walls flexing inward, outward, like the whole thing was alive. I didn't stop running until I was in the yard, sucking in air that didn't smell like mildew and grief. When I looked back, I saw something through the nursery window. A figure. She was standing by the crib again, the one that wasn't there anymore, gently rocking it, her lips moving in that same silent lullaby. And in her arms, something shifted beneath the blanket. I didn't sleep for 2 nights after that. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her standing there. The woman in the nightgown. The faint outline of a baby moving in her arms like something breathing that shouldn't be alive. But it wasn't just the image that haunted me. It was her voice. That soft, pleading whisper that didn't sound angry anymore, just broken. "You took my home. I couldn't get it out of my head." Tessa refused to talk about it. She was still pale, still distant, clutching Lily whenever I came near like I was the one who'd done something wrong. Maybe I had, because deep down, I knew I wasn't finished. I had to know who that woman was. The county clerk's office smelled like dust and toner. I told them I was researching previous ownership for insurance reasons, and they let me look through the archives. The Fraser family's records were easy to find. William and Hannah Fraser. Moved in 2009, 2 children, Ethan 5 and Claire newborn. Only one birth certificate had a matching death record. Claire's. She died in that house, but the cause of death line wasn't filled in. Instead, there was a note stapled to the corner of the report. Body unrecovered. Presumed accidental suffocation. Unrecovered. That word wouldn't leave me alone, if they never found her body. Then what was in that room? I went back a week later, alone again. I told myself it was the last time. By then, the realtor had locked the doors, but I knew a way through the cellar window. I brought a crowbar, flashlight, and a crowfoot pry bar, the kind used to lift nailed-down boards. The nursery felt colder than before. The wallpaper had started peeling near the baseboards, and the smell, that same rot-sweet odor, had spread through the entire room. I didn't waste time. I pried the boards up one by one until I found the outline of the trapdoor again. Only this time I didn't open it right away. I listened. For the first time it was quiet. No humming, no tapping, just the heavy waiting silence of a house holding its breath. When I finally lifted the door, the air that came out wasn't cold anymore. It was warm, damp. The flashlight caught the bottom of the steps, and something white resting against the concrete. A child's shoe. Beside it, a tiny porcelain music box. When I picked it up, the mechanism inside clicked once and then started playing by itself. The lullaby. That same soft, trembling tune that had haunted me through the monitor. Halfway down the steps, I saw her, not the woman, not exactly. What was left of her? The body was mummified by time, the nightgown still clinging to her bones, her fingers wrapped tight around a bundle of faded fabric. Lily's blanket. No, not Lily's. Claire's. The original. There was a note pinned to her dress. Ink almost faded away. She wouldn't stop crying. I just needed her to sleep. I'll keep her close until she wakes. My stomach turned. Hannah Fraser never lost her baby. She hid with her down here, and when she died, the house sealed them both in. I should have run. I wanted to run. But something stopped me. A faint sound from behind me. The door above creaked shut. Then the lullaby started again. Louder this time, filling the stairwell with its off-key sweetness. When I looked back, I saw her shadow on the far wall, tall, swaying, rocking something in her arms. She wakes for me now. I bolted up the stairs, slamming into the trapdoor, pushing until my shoulders burned. It wouldn't move. I screamed, pounded, begged, and finally the wood gave way. I tumbled into the nursery, gasping. The air was different, still thick, humming faintly with energy, and the crib was back. Not ours. Not new, the old one. White paint chipped, one rail missing. Inside it was the music box, still turning. Lily's photo sat beside it. The one Tessa took our first week here, except now. There was a faint shape in the corner of the frame, a woman, smiling, watching. We left the state the next day. Sold what little we had, took whatever loss it cost us. I never went back. But sometimes at night, when Lily's asleep and the baby monitor crackles to life, I hear that faint hum again. And underneath it, a whisper. She doesn't cry for me anymore. It started with the scratching, faint at first, right above my bed. I thought it was just squirrels. Old house, old wood. The usual noises that come with renting a place too cheap to ask questions about, but squirrels don't whisper your name. The first time it happened, I was half asleep. I heard a soft rustling, then something light like fingertips dragging slowly across the plaster overhead. Then, Eli. Just that. Whispered through the ceiling, low and drawn out like someone trying to get my attention through a wall. I sat up fast, heart pounding. The apartment was dark except for the streetlight outside bleeding through the blinds. The sound stopped. I waited for 10 minutes, staring up, barely breathing. Nothing. By morning, I convinced myself it was a dream, but it wasn't. The building was one of those converted Victorians, high ceilings, thin walls, and a crawl space running between the floors. My unit was on the second story, directly beneath the attic. The landlord, Mr. Rowe, had mentioned that no one used the attic anymore. "Don't worry about it," he'd said. "We sealed it years ago. Rats and rain leaks, that should have made me feel better. It didn't, because every night after that, the noise came back, always around 2:30 a.m., scratching, then dragging, then a faint rhythmic thud, 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 like someone crawling with their elbows and knees. Sometimes it moved from one end of the ceiling to the other, slow, deliberate, following me as I shifted in bed, and sometimes, just before it stopped, I'd hear a breath, wet, close, inside the ceiling. By the third night, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed a broom and banged the ceiling hard. "Knock it off." The scratching paused, then came 3 knocks back, right above me, perfectly timed. Like whoever, or whatever, was up there had been waiting for me to respond. The next morning, I went to the landlord's office, exhausted. He looked irritated before I even finished explaining. "There's no one up there," he said. "That crawl space was sealed when we remodeled. You're hearing pipes. Or raccoons. Old buildings make noise. Then open it," I said. "Show me," he frowned. "The attic hatch is painted over. Besides, the insulation's toxic." He started walking away, but before he reached the door, I asked, "Has anyone complained before?" That stopped him. He turned slightly. His eyes narrowed just enough for me to notice. "Not recently," he said. Then he left. That night, the scratching got louder. No more faint scuttling, it was full-on crawling. The ceiling actually creaked under the weight of something moving directly above my bed. I turned on the light and stared at the plaster. There was a faint outline now, a dark stain spreading in an uneven oval, like something had been pressing against the ceiling from the other side. It moved, just slightly, enough for dust to fall from the seam where the molding met the wall. I stepped back, phone in hand, recording, whispering under my breath, "What the hell?" The stain shifted again and something pressed through. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, but then I saw it clearly, the outline of a hand, thin. Long fingers splayed against the plaster, dragging slowly across. I dropped my phone. When I turned the light off, the scratching stopped instantly. I turned it back on. The handprint was gone. By morning, I'd made up my mind. I was leaving. But when I started packing, I noticed something strange about the vent above my bed. The cover was loose, barely hanging by one screw. Inside, I saw movement, not fast, not scurrying, just the faint shifting of pale skin. A face appeared and upside down, pressed against the metal grating. It smiled, and in a voice no louder than a breath, it whispered, "You shouldn't have looked." Part 2. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that face. Upside down, pale skin stretched thin, smiling through the vent like it was happy I'd noticed. By sunrise, I'd convinced myself I imagined it. Sleep deprivation, stress, that had to be it. But when I went to close the vent cover, I saw something that made my stomach twist. A single strand of black hair, caught in the metal grate. It wasn't mine. I went to the hardware store that afternoon and bought 2 cheap motion cameras, the kind you can control from your phone. I set one on top of the wardrobe facing the ceiling vent, and the other on the hallway aimed toward the attic hatch. If something, or someone said I was in there, I'd have proof. The rest of the day was silent. No scratching. No whispers. It was almost worse that way, like it was waiting. At 2:46 a.m., the camera pinged. My phone lit up with a motion alert. When I opened the feed, the first thing I saw was darkness. Then the faintest shimmer of movement near the vent, something thin and shifting. The image pixelated, flickered, then focused again. There was a hand reaching through the slats. The fingers were wrong. Too long, bending at strange angles, sliding soundlessly along the metal like they didn't have bones. They curled inward, and then something pulled. The vent cover came off with a soft clatter. I froze. The camera caught it all. The vent opening. The faint outline of a head emerging from the shadows, eyes glinting, then the feed went dead. When I checked the hallway camera, it had cut out at the same time. Static for exactly 2 minutes, then back to normal. Whatever it was had disabled both cameras. That meant it knew I was watching. I didn't leave the apartment. I couldn't. I just sat on the couch, lights on, knife in my hand, watching the ceiling. Around 3:10 a.m., I heard it again. Not crawling this time, sliding across the living room ceiling. Slow, wet, dragging. Something heavy moved above the light fixture. The glass shade rattled. Then came a sound that still makes my skin crawl when I think about it. A low, rasping laugh, like someone trying to mimic human laughter through a broken throat. I called Mr. Rowe. I didn't care that it was the middle of the night. He answered on the 3rd ring, voice thick with sleep. "What is it?" "There's someone in the ceiling," I said, words tumbling out. "They're crawling around and I have video." He cut me off. "Stop, listen to me." His tone changed, sharp. "You didn't open anything, did you?" "What?" "The vent. The hatch. Anything." I hesitated. "No," he exhaled hard. "Then leave it that way. I'll come by tomorrow. Don't go near the ceiling." Then he hung up. I didn't move for the rest of the night, but when the sun finally came up, I went to the vent anyway. I had to see. The cover was gone. Inside, the metal was scratched and dented, like someone had been clawing from the other side, and deeper in and maybe a foot back. There was something carved into the duct wall. Letters, 4 of them. "Help." Mr. Rowe showed up around noon. He looked worse than I'd ever seen him. Pale, sweating, jumpy. He didn't ask to come in. Just stood in the doorway and said, "You weren't supposed to rent this unit." "What are you talking about?" He rubbed his temples, eyes darting toward the ceiling. "There used to be another floor here. When the city made us lower the ceilings, they found something between the joists, a space someone had been living in." I stared at him. "Living?" He nodded once. "We sealed it. Thought that was the end of it. But every few years, the tenants start hearing things again. He looked up, voice shaking now. I think she's still there, I stepped back. She? He didn't answer. Instead, he handed me a small metal key. If you're stupid enough to stay another night, there's a panel in the attic closet. This opens it. But if you see her, he stopped. Swallowed hard. Don't let her speak your name again. Then he left. That night, I sat under the ceiling with the key in my hand. The scratching had already started again, but now it wasn't alone. I could hear breathing, and underneath it, my own name. Whispered. Drawn out. Eli. I didn't want to go back up there. Every cell in my body screamed not to. But that key in my hand felt like gravity. Cold, heavy, impossible to ignore. The ceiling was quiet that evening. No scratching, no voice. Almost like she was waiting. Around midnight, I finally stood. My knees shook. The air in the apartment felt wrong. Heavy, humid, like it was holding its breath. I told myself I'd just look. Just find the panel, see what was inside, and leave. But when you hear something, whisper your name from the dark. Just looking stops being an option. The attic hatch was in the hallway closet. The one Mr. Rose said had been sealed years ago. Except it wasn't sealed anymore. The paint around the edges was cracked, like someone had pried it open recently. I climbed up using the stepladder, heart thudding against my ribs, and pressed the key into the small metal latch. It turned easily. When the panel swung open, a gust of warm, stale air rolled out, thick with dust and something faintly rotten. The space above was barely a foot tall, a narrow crawl space between floors, long and dark, stretching into nothing. I lifted my flashlight. At first I saw insulation, pipes, old wiring. Then, fabric. A piece of red flannel wedged between beams like someone's sleeve. And next to it, a small paper tag. It said, "Property of E. Darnell." My full name. The breath caught in my throat. I crawled in inch by inch, flashlight shaking. My palms brushed over old nails, splinters, dust thick enough to choke on. About 6 feet in, the crawl space widened slightly, just enough for a person to sit upright. And that's when I saw it. A nest, piles of blankets, fast food wrappers, and Polaroid photos pinned to the beams with nails. Every photo was of me, sleeping, cooking, sitting at my desk. Dozens of them, all taken from above, through the vents. My mind went blank. I couldn't even feel fear anymore. Just cold disbelief. I whispered, "No, no, no." Something moved behind me. The sound was so soft I almost missed it. A faint drag, like bare skin sliding against wood. Then a voice, inches from my ear. "You're awake tonight." I spun around, nearly dropping the flashlight. For half a second I saw her clearly. A woman, or what used to be one, thin to the point of breaking, eyes sunken black, limbs too long, joints bending wrong. Her skin was gray with dust, her hair matted against the ceiling. She was crawling, upside down, pressed flat against the beams, smiling that same awful smile from the vent. "I like when you listen." I scrambled backward, kicking, choking on dust. My flashlight beam trembled over her face, her ribs stretching with each breath. She started moving toward me. Not fast, just slow, deliberate, like she knew I had nowhere to go. I dropped the light and lunged for the opening. The metal edge sliced my palm as I pulled myself out. I slammed the hatch shut, locked it, and staggered back. For a long time, I just stood there, shaking, bleeding, waiting for her to start crawling again. But she didn't. Instead, a soft scraping sound came from the other side of the panel, a fingernail tracing letters into the metal. When it stopped, I shined my phone light on it. She'd written, "Found you." I called Mr. Rowe at dawn. No answer. When I went to his office, it was empty. Furniture gone, door locked. The property manager said he'd moved out suddenly 2 nights ago. I checked online later that day. There was no record of him owning the building. In fact, the property had been listed as condemned for almost 10 years. The previous landlord's name? Elijah Rowe. Same as mine. That night, I sat on the couch with the lights off, staring up at the ceiling, because I finally understood. She wasn't just in the walls. She belonged to them, to this house, And she didn't whisper my name because she'd learned it. She whispered it because she remembered it. I heard her crawling again just before sunrise. The ceiling above me bowed slightly, like something heavy was pressing down. Then, softly, almost lovingly, she said, "You left me here." I didn't sleep after that. Didn't move. Didn't breathe right. That voice, "You left me here." It replayed over and over in my head like a broken record. I didn't understand. Not really. But something deep inside me, something I didn't want to remember, did. By morning, the apartment was ice cold. My thermostat said 75, but my breath fogged when I exhaled. The walls were sweating. Literally. Small drops of condensation slid down the paint. The air tasted metallic. When I looked up, I saw a bulge in the ceiling above the couch. The drywall bent downward like it was breathing. I backed away. The bulge shifted again. A cracking sound echoed through the plaster. Faint, wet pops, followed by the slow tearing of fabric or skin. Then I heard her whisper through the ceiling, "Do you remember me now, Eli?" I ran to the door. It wouldn't open. The chain lock had been thrown from the inside, but I hadn't touched it. My keys, gone. My phone, dead, even though I'd charged it overnight. The house hummed. A low, thrumming vibration through the floorboards, like something was alive beneath me. Every light flickered in rhythm with it. I backed into the hallway, eyes fixed on the attic hatch. That's when I saw it. Faint red light leaking from the edges of the panel. It wasn't just light, though. It pulsed, slow, steady, like a heartbeat. The key Mr. Rowe, or whoever he was, had given me was still in my pocket. I didn't want to touch it, but my hand moved anyway. It burned cold against my skin, and then I heard it again. Her voice, this time clearer, almost human. "You said you'd come back for me." My memory snapped. I saw flashes, a different time, same building, ceilings lower, paint new. I was smaller, maybe a teenager. My father yelling, a girl crying, "You shouldn't have brought her here, Eli. She doesn't have anywhere else to go." Then, silence. And later, crawling sounds above my bed at night. A whisper through the vent. "Promise you won't forget me." I looked at the ceiling and whispered, "Lena." The red light pulsed faster. She laughed. "You do remember." The drywall cracked open down the middle like a wound splitting. Dust fell around me, and a shape pressed through. First her hands, then her face. She looked exactly as she had in the crawl space. Thin, gray, brittle. But now her eyes were wet and shining, like she was still alive. She hung upside down. From the ceiling, hair dangling, lips trembling with a smile that wasn't cruel anymore, just hurt. "You left me here," she whispered again. "You locked the door. You forgot." I shook my head, tears blurring my vision. That wasn't me. I was just a kid. My dad? "No," she said softly. "You promised." She dropped from the ceiling. No sound. Just landed on her hands and feet like a spider. Face inches from mine. Her breath smelled like mold and dust and something sweet, like rotting fruit. "Stay," she whispered. Like I did. Then she reached out and pressed her palm against my chest. Her skin was freezing, and under it I felt my heartbeat slowing, sinking with the pulse in the ceiling. I staggered back, gasping, grabbed the knife from the kitchen counter and slashed the air between us. The blade passed through her like smoke. She didn't flinch, didn't move, just tilted her head and smiled. "It's your turn now." Then she climbed back up the wall, impossibly fast, disappearing into the vent. The house went silent. The lights stopped flickering. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. When I turned on my phone again, it worked. But all the saved camera footage, every video of her, every photo, was gone. In its place, there was just one new file. A picture of me, sleeping, taken from above. I moved out that morning. Left everything behind. The clothes, the dishes, the cameras. The new tenant moved in 2 weeks later. I know because I drove past the building and saw him unloading boxes. And that night, I got a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of the man sitting on the couch in my old apartment. In the top corner of the picture, faint but clear, a face peering through the vent. Her face. The first time the mirror blinked, I thought it was a trick of the light. I was brushing my teeth before work, half asleep, staring at my own tired face when my reflection blinked, a half second before I did. Not after. Before. It was small enough that I almost convinced myself I imagined it. But it happened again 2 nights later. Same bathroom, same mirror, only this time my reflection smiled, while I didn't. I moved into the apartment 3 weeks ago. Cheap rent, central downtown, utilities included. The kind of deal that screams, don't ask questions. It was fine at first. Small boxy but quiet, too quiet. There was a stillness here I couldn't explain. No hum of neighbors, no muffled TVs through the wall, just silence. Sometimes I'd stand in the bathroom and listen. Behind the wall I could swear I heard breathing, faint, slow, in sync with mine. I told my friend Max about it over the phone. He laughed and said, "Congrats, man. You've got ghosts or black mold. Either way, run." I laughed too, but it didn't sound right coming out of my mouth. That night, I taped a small piece of paper to the bottom corner of the bathroom mirror, just a little folded note that said, "You first." The next morning, it was gone. The tape was still there, the paper wasn't. I started noticing other things, tiny cracks forming at the edge of the mirror that weren't there before. A faint gap between the glass and the wall, just wide enough to slide a fingernail into. And sometimes when I leaned close, I could hear faint sounds from behind the mirror, shifting, whispering. Once a small thud, like someone accidentally bumped their head against the other side. 2 nights later, I woke up to a noise in the bathroom, not loud, but steady, a soft click, click, click sound. I grabbed my phone flashlight and crept down the hall. The bathroom door was half open. The mirror light was off, but there was a faint glow coming from behind it. I pushed the door open wider and froze. The mirror wasn't reflecting the bathroom anymore. It was showing a room, a small, dimly lit space with yellow wallpaper and an old metal chair, and sitting in that chair was me, except I wasn't moving. The version of me in the mirror was just sitting there, hands folded, smiling faintly, eyes locked on mine. I stumbled back, almost dropping my phone. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it echoing in my ears. I blinked, and the mirror went black. When I turned on the light, my reflection was normal again, but the yellow wallpaper stuck in my mind. I didn't have wallpaper anywhere in the apartment. The next day I called the property manager. She sounded distracted, almost annoyed. "Unit 4B? Yeah, those mirrors are double-backed. Maintenance space behind the walls. Probably just old wiring." I asked if I could look. There was a pause. Then she said, "That panel's sealed. Don't try to open it." I laughed awkwardly. "Why not?" Another pause. Then flatly, "Because the last tenant did." And she hung up. That night, I put a small piece of duct tape over the crack in the mirror. Not for repairs, just so I'd know if someone moved it again. When I woke up the next morning, the tape was gone, and written across the glass, in perfect handwriting that matched mine exactly, were 3 words, "Let me out." I didn't go to work the next day. I couldn't. All morning I sat at my kitchen table staring down the hall at that damn bathroom door. The words on the mirror, "Let me out," were still there when I went to bed. But now in daylight they were gone, no smudge. No residue, just clean glass. I told myself it was a prank. Maybe condensation, maybe stress. But deep down I knew better. Around noon I decided to test it. I taped another note to the glass. "Who are you?" Then I set up my phone on the counter, hit record, and left the room. When I came back 20 minutes later, the note was gone. The tape was still there, same as before. I opened the video file, heart pounding. For a while, nothing. Just me leaving the room. Then, about 4 minutes in, the mirror flickered. The reflection rippled like water disturbed by a pebble, and for a single frame, Not even a full second, a hand appeared, pressed flat against the glass. It wasn't mine. The fingers were too long. The nails were dark, cracked, and scrawled across the palm in what looked like charcoal were the same 3 words: "Let me out." I packed a bag. My brain was screaming at me to get out, but I couldn't leave without knowing what was behind that mirror. I grabbed a screwdriver from the drawer and went into the bathroom. The air felt wrong, thick, damp, metallic like rain hitting rust. When I pressed the edge of the screwdriver into the corner of the mirror, it gave easily, too easily. The glass pulled away from the wall with a soft suction sound, revealing a narrow black void behind it. A draft hit my face, warm and wet, like breath. I shined my flashlight in. Behind the mirror wasn't a wall. It was a corridor, a small square tunnel about 3 feet wide stretching sideways into darkness. The walls were covered in old wallpaper, yellow, peeling, and familiar. It was the same wallpaper I'd seen in the reflection. I don't know why, but I climbed in. The smell hit me immediately. Dust, mold, and something faintly rotten, like old food or something worse. I could hear my own breathing echo off the walls. The tunnel sloped slightly down, maybe 10 feet before it opened into a small room. That's when I saw it. A chair, metal, rusted, sitting in the center of the room and taped to the seat. A Polaroid photo of me, sitting at my bathroom sink, brushing my teeth, taken from behind the mirror. I stumbled backward, hitting the wall. My flashlight flickered, and for a split second I thought I saw movement in the corner. Something shifting. When the light steadied, the corner was empty, except for a small hole in the floorboards. I crouched down, shining the beam through the opening. Below was another space in another room, filled with old furniture, moldy clothes, and a narrow mattress. And on that mattress I saw someone lying still. Face turned toward me, eyes open, I dropped the flashlight. It clattered across the wood, beam spinning wildly, slicing through shadows until it landed on her face. She looked just like me, every detail. Same eyes, same scar on the chin from when I fell off my bike as a kid. But she was breathing. Her chest rose and fell, slow and steady. When her eyes shifted, locking onto mine, I froze. And then she smiled. "Took you long enough," she whispered. I scrambled backward through the tunnel, glass cutting into my palms. The mirror opening loomed ahead, glowing faintly from the bathroom light. I hauled myself out, slamming the glass back into place. It cracked across the middle but held. My reflection stared back at me, chest heaving, pupils huge, except it wasn't my reflection because she blinked first. I ran. Grabbed my keys, my phone, didn't even bother with shoes. When I reached the front door, the knob wouldn't turn. The deadbolt was stuck. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I answered without thinking. Static. Breathing. Then a voice that sounded exactly like mine said, "You shouldn't have opened it." And from the bathroom behind the mirror, something started knocking. Slow. Heavy. Knock. 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 I didn't go near the bathroom again for the rest of the night. I couldn't. Every few minutes the knocking would start again, slow and deliberate, like she was waiting for me to answer. Around 3 a.m., it stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. I tried to sleep on the couch, but every time I closed my eyes, I saw her lying on that mattress. Breathing in the dark, her smile burned into my brain. At sunrise, I packed my bag again and left. The property manager's office was in the lobby, a cramped little room that always smelled like cigarettes and stale coffee. The same woman picked up when I walked in, except this time she looked startled to see me. "4B," I said, voice shaking. "What the hell is behind my bathroom mirror?" She stared at me for a moment, then reached up to close the blinds. "Sit," she said. I didn't move. I said, "Sit." Her tone made me obey. She leaned in and lowered her voice. "You opened it, didn't you?" I hesitated. "There's a space back there, rooms, a woman—" "Not a woman," she snapped. "Not anymore." Her eyes darted to the door. "That's not supposed to exist. They sealed it off in 1997 after the inspection. Said it was an old maintenance corridor from before the renovation. But it wasn't maintenance. What was it? She hesitated, rubbing her thumb over a silver ring on her hand. They used to build apartments in clusters back then, she said quietly. 4 walls, 1 shared cavity between. Tenants would hear each other, complain about voices. The walls were thin, but it wasn't noise from other people. It was her. I swallowed hard. Who? She met my eyes. Whoever you saw. I wanted to call her crazy, but everything she said made too much sense. So that space behind the mirrors runs through the entire building, she finished. Like a second skin, I stared at her. You're saying there's a, what, tunnel between all the apartments? She nodded. It's connected. Floor to ceiling, end to end. A perfect mirror maze. And she moves through it. She? The reflection, she said. The one that doesn't follow the rules anymore. That night I went back to my apartment because, stupidly, I wanted proof. I wanted to see if what she said was real. The mirror looked normal. No cracks. No words. But when I stood there in the dim light and watched long enough, I started seeing movement in the edges of the reflection. Not in my own image. In the corners of the room behind it. Tiny shifts. Like someone pacing slowly just out of sight. I decided to test it. I went into my bedroom, turned on my phone flashlight and held it against the wall that shared space with the bathroom. A second later, the light dimmed, like something pressed against the other side of the drywall. I felt it, a faint vibration. Then another, like footsteps but not walking away, getting closer, backed up until I hit the dresser. My heart was slamming so hard it hurt. Then I heard it again, knock, knock, knock. This time not from the bathroom, from inside the bedroom wall. I wanted to scream, but I couldn't make a sound. Instead, I whispered, "What do you want?" There was silence. Then her voice came through the plaster, my own voice whispering back, "You let me out." Now it's your turn. I bolted for the door, but the knob was ice cold. When I tried to twist it, I felt resistance, like someone on the other side was holding it still. My reflection in the TV screen across the room was wrong. She was standing closer than I was, and she wasn't moving with me anymore. When I lifted my hand, hers stayed still, then slowly, deliberately pressed her palm flat against the glass. "You can't hide in there forever," she whispered. The voice didn't come from the TV. It came from behind the... Well, that's when I realized she wasn't confined to the mirror anymore. The whole apartment had become one. Every reflective surface shimmered faintly now. The windows, the microwave door, the chrome faucet. Each one held her shadow, and every time I looked away, she got closer. By the 4th night, I had every mirror in the apartment covered. Sheets, tape, blankets, anything I could find. But it didn't matter. She was still here. I'd see her shape ripple across the TV when it was off, or in the reflection of a window when headlights passed by outside. Sometimes I'd catch her face hovering just behind mine in the faint shine of the doorknob, always smiling, always waiting. I didn't go near the bathroom for 2 days, but by the 3rd, the air in the apartment changed. It felt charged, like static before a storm. Every hair on my arm stood up. The lights flickered, and then I heard it, not knocking this time, but scraping, metal against metal. I knew that sound. The mirror was coming loose again. When I finally went in, the air hit me like a wall, hot, damp, heavy with the smell of rot and something chemical. The sheet I'd taped over the mirror was shredded. Behind it, the glass was gone entirely, just a dark, gaping hole. I lifted my phone, turned on the flashlight, and stepped closer. The tunnel was there again. The yellow wallpaper, the metal chair, but this time it wasn't empty. Someone was standing inside. She looked exactly like me. Same face, same posture, same tired clothes. Except her expression was wrong. Too calm, too soft, like she'd been waiting a long time for this moment. "You look tired," she said. Her voice wasn't echoing from the tunnel. It was inside my head. I took a step back. She took a step forward. Our movements weren't mirrored anymore. They were real. "Stay away," I said, holding my flashlight like a weapon. She tilted her head. "You shouldn't have left me alone in here." I shook my head. "I don't know what you are." "I'm you," she said. "The version you left behind." Her face twitched, not in anger, but in something like pain. "When you look away, I keep watching. When you forget, I remember. She raised a hand, palm up. It was pale, scarred, trembling slightly. "It's your turn." The floor under me vibrated, faintly at first, then stronger. The walls around the tunnel began to hum, low and steady, like a live wire. The flashlight flickered. Then the glass around the edges of the hole began melting. Slow drips of silver light ran down the wall, pooling on the tile. The smell of burning metal filled the air. "You wanted to see what was behind the mirror," she whispered. "Now you'll never have to leave." Her hand reached through the gap, and this time I felt it. Cold fingers closing around my wrist. I screamed and pulled, but she was impossibly strong. The world around me warped, the tiles stretching. Bending inward like gravity was shifting toward her. The edges of the bathroom began to blur, reflections rippling in every shiny surface. I saw dozens of versions of myself staring back, one screaming, one silent, one smiling like she did. I wasn't sure which one was real anymore. She yanked again, and my body hit the wall. But instead of stopping, I sank into it, like the surface turned to liquid glass. Cold swallowed me whole. I was falling through mirrors, dozens of rooms, each identical to mine, flashed by in silence. Bathrooms, bedrooms, faces pressed against glass, all of them me. Some of them were pounding on the other side, begging to get out. Some were laughing, and one, the last one, whispered as I fell past, "You shouldn't have let her out." When I woke up, I was sitting on the metal chair. The yellow wallpaper was peeling. The light above me was flickering, and across from me, through the glass one, was my apartment. Empty. Except for her. She was moving around my space, calm and deliberate like she'd always lived there. She picked up my phone, my keys. Then she looked straight into the mirror, into me. "Thank you," she said softly, and then she turned off the light. "I've been here for days now. Maybe weeks. There's no clock. No sound except my own breathing. Sometimes I see other rooms, other faces pressed against their walls, watching. Sometimes I hear knocking from somewhere deep in the glass, someone else trying to get out. But no one ever does. Not really. If you ever move into 4B and you see a crack in your bathroom mirror, don't touch it. And if your reflection ever smiles first, it's already too late.